Date point. 4th year. 9th month. 1st week. 2nd day. AV. Starship Sanctuary. Deep space. Julian Esther City. It's kicking harder than I thought it would. How much harder? Well, like, this gun's kicking about as much as the kind you see in a movie, but the bullets are tiny. Yep, basic rule, Esther City. You don't learn anything about guns from Hollywood. Sanctuary was a yacht, not built for transport capacity, so its cargo rooms were long and narrow afterthoughts, tucked away in an unused structural space on either side of the power core's equator. Aside from the slight curve, they were about perfect for use as a shooting range, and Andersson had found a micrometeoroid protection foam that doubled perfectly as a bullet catcher, which he had sprayed all over the back wall. After that, the nanofactory had made it trivial to construct some targets. Okay, so you got a feel for it, she said, and stepped up to him, just a little bit too close for innocence, aiming her left foot down range and mimicking the gun he was holding. So just aim a little bit lower, and remember, you want to squeeze the trigger. That's not the only thing I want to squeeze. Focus! He slowed his breathing a little, and directed his attention to the weapon. This was no different than mastering throwing his hatchet had been. All he needed was repetition. Aim a little lower, squeeze on the exhale. Whoa. See? I hardly felt it that time. She stepped around him, and this time there was contact as she indicated what he had done right. You didn't jerk the trigger, so the gun didn't fly up like this, so the recoil didn't make it worse, you see? He saw, and flexed his grip on the gun. He also saw the way her eyes flickered to the movement of the muscles in his arms. Then they flicked up and they made eye contact. By some effort of will he held her gaze, and this time, she was the one who finally broke eye contact and looked away, clearing her throat and pulse raised. Jesus, Lewis is right. She took the gun off him, gently. So, watch me. Stance. Aim. Fire. 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 Click. She ejected the magazine, checked the gun was safe, and set it down on the bench before pressing the button to recall the target. Their paper hunter had a trio of holes inside the 10-point circle of his razor-toothed mouth that Julian could have fit his thumb over. Show off, he said. She smiled over her shoulder at him, confidence restored. Jealous, Esther City? Yeah. With practice you might be half as good as me, she teased, putting the gun back in its box. I wasn't talking about the gun. She turned, and he was astonished to find that his own feet had carried him up behind her, so that when she did so, their belt buckles were practically touching. She put her hands behind her, bracing herself on the table. That smooth son of a bitch upstairs? She asked. Please. Like he's half the man I am. She tried to laugh it off. Ego, Esther City? Planet Nightmare, 6 years. Figured I've earned it. He leaned just a little closer, watching her lips part and her skin flush. Problem is, that planet doesn't teach you how to be real with somebody. She swallowed a little. Being real, huh? Yeah. How real do you want? Fucking tell her, you stupid son of a bitch. How... He cleared his throat. How real have you got? Good job, man. Way to wuss out. She blinked at him. Then she kissed him. Sheer surprise almost stopped him from kissing back. Almost. Instinct saved him, driving him forward to meet her with a back-of-the-throat noise of delight that came out of nowhere, sending his arms around her waist. She gripped his hair with one hand while the other splayed on his chest over his heart, then moaned softly as he put a hand on her ass and pulled her hips towards his own. Her own hand went straight down the line of his torso and pressed against the front of his jeans, gripping lightly and lingering there for just a second before she broke the kiss and recoiled as if his dick had burned her. Fuck, too real, she gasped. Too real, Jesus, whoa. They let go of each other, pulses pounding. Too real? He asked, unsure what to make of that. Too... She kissed him again. Much. Too much. I meant too much, but real enough. God. I'm confused. Can we go for real talk before we do any more... real anything else? He slipped his hands around her waist again, gently this time. Talk. You are... unbelievably sexy, you know that? All of my turn-ons in one guy is crazy. Good, I guess. I can't... Oh, for fuck's sake, Julian, I really want to fuck you. I figured. No, shut up and let me say this. I really want to, but we're not going to, okay? Not so long as we're on this ship. Not happening. What a fucking tease. No, think, dumbass. It took an effort of will, but Julian wrestled his frustrated libido into the corner, and the logic presented itself. You're worried about the ship. The mission? Oh, fuck's sake, do you have to understand as well? She exploded. Yes, the mission. Being on this ship, doing something with my life, mattering. I don't want to lose that. So, what do you want? The question shut her down for a second as she thought about it. What about you? Are we just physical? Shit, I don't know. We're a pretty good team, and I like you. Like me? A fuck of a lot, yeah. Julian smiled sadly. Have we ever done anything other than exercise and flirt? What's your favourite movie? Band? I don't even know where you grew up or what you did before your abduction. I like you too, despite all the taunting, but... She shut him up with a kiss. Okay, that's enough for you right there, she said. Let's start with all that shit and figure out the rest, yeah? If that's what you want. That's what I want, she confirmed. Okay. Great. Yeah. So, what is your favourite movie? Allison froze, then glanced up at the ceiling. Julian frowned. What? He asked. Just checking there's no cameras in here, she said. I don't want the guys to hear this. So wait, you'd be fine with them watching? She interrupted him. It's Tangled. Tangled? Yeah. I've, never seen that one. Oh. She cleared her throat, tied down her shirt a little, and put her hair back in its ponytail. Do you want to? Sure. There's, just one thing, yeah? What? I, like to sing along. He blinked at her, then smiled. I think, he said, that is going to work. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 2nd day, AV. Fault for Colony Palace, Simbrine, the Far Reaches. Sir Jeremy Sandy. While Sir Jeremy had always found Gabriel Ares to be an excellent man to work with, he wished all such senior police officers, superintendents, chief constables, or whatever equivalent rank he had dealt with during his career had been so responsible. But long years of experience had granted him a sixth sense for when he was about to have a difficult meeting, and from the tone of the polite request that Ares had sent, today's was going to be a tough one. He knocked, poked his head into Gabriel's office and asked, Are you busy? Ares issued a humorless, monosyllabic laugh, and beckoned him to enter. So Jeremy sat down opposite his closest colleague. So, what can I do for you, Gabriel? He asked. Gabriel finished up what he was doing, flipped a sheet of paper into one of the piles on his desk that, presumably, meant something to him, and gave Sir Jeremy his full attention. You realize we've got an independently owned jump array allowing people onto this planet now, right? Yes. Run by an organization owned by a man who doesn't know about the hierarchy. I don't trust Byron to keep it a secret. What's the matter? Aren't your people screening the immigrants? My people don't know why they're screening for neural implants, Gabriel said. And in any case, that represents one thin blue point of failure right here in Thulfa. The traffic coming through the Scotch Creek array is at least being checked several times and probably by people who know why it's so important. He frowned. Why are we keeping it a secret anyway? It's no crazier than some of the other stuff that's happened these last 5 years. You think people won't believe it? To avoid spooking the bastards into doing something rash, Sir Jeremy replied. The more people we tell, the more clear it is just how seriously we're taking this threat. So long as the hierarchy think that we aren't really taking them seriously. When Gabriel frowned uncertainly, he pressed forward. Besides, we don't want a witch hunt on our hands. We can't let the hierarchy terrorize us into jumping at shadows. That's a dangerous game, Gabriel said. A known security hole versus the possibility that they'll get more dangerous if we take them seriously. They know we're onto them already, and for fuck's sake, they're trying to genocide us. It's the considered opinion of the GRA, the UN, and NATO that keeping the existence of the hierarchy a secret is, for now, the best course of action, Sir Jeremy stated firmly. I am inclined to agree. And sure, they're right, Gabriel said. But Jeremy, if even one of their agents gets through that array undetected, then we could lose people. We could lose the whole planetary reclamation project. As the closest thing you have to a spy master right now, I'm telling you, Byron needs to know. Byron's a loudmouth, Sir Jeremy responded. Gabriel, if I thought he was at all trustworthy with the secret, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It would already be done. But we are speaking of the literal survival of our entire civilization and species here. Caution must rule the day. Gabriel sat back, sighing. He's really that bad? His exact words to me were, ethical is a brand. I think he thought he was making a witty commentary on human nature and being so famously honest. I see. That's a tough call. One that I've made. I just hope that your men are vigilant. Vigilant isn't the problem. Overworked is the problem. Our ratio of cops to citizens is way too low right now. Sir Jeremy sat in silence. Gabriel, I'll see what I can do, he said. Maybe Byron can be persuaded to tighten security on his side without being told why. I won't hold on to too much hope, though. Do what you can. I'll do what I can. And God can take care of the rest, Sir Jeremy said. Very well. Thank you, Gabriel. Sure. Sir Jeremy paused outside Eris's door, and, despite not being a praying man by inclination, still took the time to glance upwards and offer a silent please to the heavens. Frankly, he was quite sure that it was the most he could do. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 2nd day, AV. The lake, Simbrine, the far reaches. Sarah Tysdale. They didn't have long left before sunset, and Adam was putting in his 2 lengths to the submerged wreckage of the big ship and back, leaving the girls on the bank to enjoy the last of the sunlight. Ava was quiet, watching the lake, the sun, the trees, and the little animals that were flying, climbing, and occasionally jumping between them, all singing a quiet chorus that wasn't quite like any birdsong ever heard on Earth. Sarah didn't want to intrude. Her friend's expression was serene, her lips curled up at the corners. Ava looked completely at peace. Sarah just wished she could have taken a picture without disturbing her. It didn't last. Eventually Ava noticed that she was being watched and fidgeted a little, though she acknowledged the attention with a smile rather than with awkwardness and said, Sorry, I was miles away. You looked really happy. Ava tucked a rope of wet hair behind her ear and looked up at the painted sunset sky, still wearing that faint smile. I feel lighter, she said. Well, yeah, your jacket always looked heavy to me, Sarah joked. Not just the clothes, Ava laughed. Just, I don't know. She looked out across the lake again. Lighter. Sarah's curiosity had always been her weakness, and her resolve not to intrude on Ava's peace finally gave in. What changed? She asked. Huh? Well, I'm really glad you're here, but a couple of weeks ago you were freaking out over this and now... She waved a hand at both of them to indicate their mutual sky-like condition. What changed? Ava put her head on one side, thinking. Being high was really scary, she confessed. Oh yeah, Sarah agreed, glad that Ava's experience had been her own. It is, isn't it? You've been high? Yeah. I never thought it would be frightening, Ava said. Mum and Dad always made it sound like a horror story anyway, but not like a scary horror story. More like a kind of mind control horror story where the drug makes you do bad things. Oh yeah, I tried some of... Sarah tailed off and dismissed the rest of the story with a wave of her hand. But I got so scared, I thought I was going to die. Yeah. Ava looked at the lake again. That's exactly it. I thought I was going to die. And then there was the hospital and I felt really sick for days. And the doctors were all serious and some of them looked really worried, like they were out of their depth. And that was scary too. And then? And then I kind of accepted it, Ava said. Like, I don't know. Like, I wasn't happy about it, but I guess I... Sarah did something uncharacteristic and shut up, letting Ava finish the thought. I guess I realised, like, everyone's going to die someday, aren't they? Everyone. Everyone. So why be scared of it? It's going to happen one day, and then there's heaven waiting on the other side, so... Sarah very carefully didn't snort or roll her eyes, or give any indication what she thought of Ava's naive belief in heaven. Instead, when Ava drifted off again, looking at the distant black dot that was Adam turning around and beginning the last return leg of his swim, Sarah prompted her to continue. So? Ava shook herself out of it. So, I'm alive, aren't I? I've got the chance to do some of the things I've regret not doing, and this was one of them. She looked back at the sunset. I'm glad I did. This is... She smiled a little bashfully. If I died tonight, my heaven would be right here, exactly as we are. That sounded like one of the most hippie things Sarah had ever seen, but it wasn't a cynical thought. Instead, she felt a swell of vicarious happiness, and, apropos, she scooted over and gave Ava a sideways hug. Thanks for being okay, she said. You really scared us. Ava returned the hug with extra warmth. Thanks, Sarah, she replied. I'd never have had this without you. The sun was just coming into contact with the top of distant hills when Adam reached the shallows near the shore and stood up to wade the rest of the way. Got some bad news, he reported, as he shook himself off and used his hands to scrape water from his limbs and trunk. What's up? Ava asked, standing up and offering her hand to help him up the bank. Some of the trees in the west bank are looking kind of yellow, and they didn't look like that yesterday. Sarah broke the silence that greeted his news. That's it then, I guess. No coming back here. That's life, Adam said, causing Ava to nod in agreement. You've just got to enjoy what you've got while you've got it. To Sarah, that seemed like a very sad thought, but none of her friends seemed to be very upset. Instead, she watched them watch the sunset, holding hands, before Ava took a huge breath, flapped her arms in a kind of little shrug, and turned away from the lake to retrieve her clothes. Adam paused a few seconds longer before following her. Left alone on the shore, Sarah took a moment to squint at the far tree line, just to confirm that, yes, there was a patch of sickly yellow over there. Sarah, you coming? She glanced back just to acknowledge that she was, then cursed to the landscape. Goodbye, lake. Thank you. She spent most of the trip back, wondering why she wasn't crying. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 2nd day, AV. HMS Caledonia. Orbiting planet Gorai, Gauian space. Regari. Human Starship Caledonia, this is Whitecrest Clan Personnel Transport 337, requesting permission to approach and dock. Copy, 337, hold distance and stand by. There was a long pause before the human flight controller's voice returned. Whitecrest 337, please state your business. Caledonia, I am a personal envoy of Mother Supreme Guillermoy. My mission is a diplomatic one. I have no cargo or passengers, and this vessel is unarmed. Again, a long wait. Finally, his anticipation was rewarded. Whitecrest 337, power down your engines and shields and prepare to be tugged into our port flight deck. Complying. Anybody else would have probably felt that the humans were being paranoid, but Regari knew there was no such thing. In a way, their caution was comforting. It was like being surrounded by the terse professionalism of his own clan. He was met on the deck by a squad of male soldiers and a female, in a more comfortable dark blue uniform, with some kind of rank marking worn on her chest. The former watched him like a hawk as he aligned, clearly alert for danger and unwilling to relax even though he was plainly unarmed. He approved. The latter, however, held out 2 pieces of equipment. One was plainly a translator device, which he handed to him. The other was a flat paddle of some kind. I'm subjecting you to a quick search, she informed him. Regari ducked his head in acknowledgement and then stood with his arms and legs outstretched. Curiously, she began with his head, grunting as the wand beeped. It beeped a few more times as she ran it over him, wherever it passed over a metal fastening on his coverall, but she seemed to find that acceptable. You have neural implants, she said. It may have been a question, but Regari didn't detect the uptick at the end of her sentence that was characteristic of the way Zhu had asked questions, and which he assumed to be a standard human vocalization. Yes, he confirmed, wondering where she was going with the statement. So long as you're aboard ship, you will remain under marine escort. These are for your protection as much as anybody else's. This is a working warship, and we don't want you getting lost or injured, the officer informed him, in an apparent non sequitur. The gravity in sections of the ship you'll be visiting has been turned down, but you could seriously hurt yourself if you stray outside of those areas. Thank you, he said, agreeing that the escort seemed safest. The officer relaxed and extended a hand, shaking Regari's paw with human's trademark firm grip, but not with their equally trademark crushing power. Welcome aboard. I'm Lieutenant Ellen McDaniel, this ship's first lieutenant. Captain Bethini apologizes for not meeting you in person. You come very highly recommended, but he does have a ship to run. Thank you, he repeated. I completely understand. Will you come this way, please? McDaniel gestured towards a hatch with one hand. The ship was not originally of human construction, Regari could tell. There was a clear mismatch. The human technology was like stepping into a museum. It was all sturdy metal, painted a dull and hard-wearing grey, with visible and almost shockingly low-tech dials and physical controls. Sturdy bulkheads had been installed, lined with easily accessible pipes, power lines and conduits, every one festooned with bright warning labels, simple diagrams demonstrating their use, and terse blocks of text. Visible below all of that functional steel, however, was something altogether more ornate and elegant. The corridor seemed to be surprisingly wide and tall, as if built for the galactic average, which was decidedly at odds with the small, narrow pressure doors that had been spliced in at regular intervals. The deck plating was totally standard, the product of any shipyard in the interspecies dominion. The firefighting system in the ceiling, on the other hand, had clearly been ripped out and replaced for some reason. The bit that really surprised him, however, was that every last scrap of electronics had been replaced. There wasn't a single recognizable wall screen, processing unit, terminal or display to be seen. The humans couldn't possibly have computers that were on par with those of a more established spacefaring civilization, could they? McDaniel made a familiar, amused noise. A lot of her mannerisms were very much like Zhu's, though possibly that was just because she was a fellow human female. She was, after all, only the second such that Regari had ever met, but there was a lot to differentiate her from Zhu. McDaniel marched, moving at a efficient brisk pace that Regari could feel in the deck. Zhu had always glided, disarmingly soft and silent. Zhu's head fur had been long, shiny and dark black. McDaniel's was much shorter, and a kind of matte yellowish hue that Regari couldn't remember ever seeing in Gauian fur, and when Zhu had gone everywhere with her head bowed a little and hunched inwards, making herself small. McDaniel moved like she owned the place, and to judge from the deference shown to her by the ship's crew, she very nearly did. "Impressed?" she asked. "Intrigued," Regari admitted, conscious that while everything he spoke and heard was reaching him in perfect Gauian, the human would be hearing them in English thanks to the targeting interfacing sound waves the device was emitting. The effect had always disconcerted him. "You've clearly taken somebody else's ship and we worked at your needs, but I don't recognize the design." "I can't discuss the details," McDaniel told him. "But yes, this ship was captured and repurposed. A large part of its internal systems are back on Earth now, being reverse engineered." Regari glanced around. It was hard to gauge the level of advancement that the ship had originally been built at, thanks to the human replacements, but he got the impression that it had originally matched or likely exceeded the very cutting edge of Gauian hardware. Earth had achieved impressive results with just a few mangled scraps of hunter technology. He wondered what they would achieve with these new, intact trophies. One thing he did notice was that it was eerily quiet. A warship this size should have been permeated by the background hum of its power cores. On Caledonia, the sound came from the crew and the air systems, neither of which were loud. After they had gone down a flight or two of extremely steep stairs, almost ladders really, McDaniel opened a hatch and politely gestured him into a meeting room of some description, where he sat down. The chairs were a little awkwardly shaped for a Gauian, leaving his feet extended outwards, well above the ground, and sliding his hips forward so as to bend his knees comfortably, only induced an uncomfortable bend in his spine. He eventually settled for swiveling the chair a quarter turn and sitting on it sideways. The Marines had remained outside. "So, to business then," McDaniel said. "Would you like some coffee? How does caffeine affect your species?" "I don't know," Regari confessed. "I don't know what that is." "Probably best not then," McDaniel said ruefully. "You don't mind if I have a cup, do you?" "Not at all." McDaniel opened a thermal flask, and a strong scent assailed Regari's nose as she poured out a seeming blackish-brown liquid. It smelled quite nice, he decided, but it also promised that the substance itself probably wouldn't taste as good as it smelled. At least, not to him. McDaniel sipped it and seemed very pleased with the result. Then she set the cup aside. "So, your diplomatic assignment?" "A plea. One of our own has gone missing. One of your own, too." "I don't follow." Regari scratched behind his ear. "How much do you know about our clan of females?" he asked. McDaniel shrugged. "Less than I would like to before drawing any conclusions," she said. "They're certainly, no offense intended, the most powerful of your clans by a dint of sheer population and control over the breeding rights, but I can't say I know much more than that." "Well, one thing you may not appreciate is that you don't necessarily have to be a Gauian to be part of a clan," Regari told her, "though that precedent was actually set by a human." "Really?" McDaniel looked intrigued. "Oh yes. She saved a colony group of mothers, sisters and cubs from an illicit courty science facility some 5 homeward years ago, before your species' first faster-than-light flight. She couldn't go home. We didn't even know where Earth was at the time, so the females declared her one of their own and took her in. She's officially a sister." "And she's gone missing?" "That's right. I think in your terms, I last saw her just under 2 years ago." "You last saw her?" Regari ducked his head, ears rotating slightly. "Shu is a friend," he confessed. "I was tasked with looking after her and did so for more than a year." "Shu?" "Her name is just impossible for Gauians to pronounce correctly. Shu Shang is the closest I can get." "And she just vanished?" "I think I'd better tell you the whole story from the start," Regari told her. Some minutes later, his account was briefly interrupted when a junior of some description arrived and handed McDaniel a hard copy file. Little more than a brown folder and a few sheets of paper, but the face looking out from the first of those pieces of paper was definitely Shu, albeit looking younger, a little rounder in the face and a little less stressed than Regari remembered her. "Shu Chang," she said, also mispronouncing the name slightly, making it sound like Jew. "Abducted from, Vancouver, 3 days before the Hunter attack there. Turned 24 last month. Was studying acting at UBC at the time of her abduction. Last known sighting nearly 2 years ago. Pretty much a full year before the abductee reclamation program really swung into gear aboard a private corporal cargo relay station." "That station was handling hundreds of ships a day," Regari said. By the time we woke up and found her missing, dozens had come and gone. She could have been on any of them. And from there, he made a helpless gesture, ears downcast. I'm the one who taught her how to cover her tracks. Apparently she was a good student. It says here that she's known to have been wounded by a nerve jam pulse, but Daniel said. Yes, it nearly killed her. That's good bad news. At least it didn't kill her, but those weapons have some terrible long-term effects. How did it happen? Well, as I was saying, we were having a tough fight of it. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 2nd day, AV. Starship Sanctuary. Docked at Free Trade Station 1090. Endless possibility. Marko system. The signal stars. Kirk. Zane's dense patois, fortunately, was handled perfectly well by the translator, though only after Lewis was instructed to reprogram it. Apparently Zane didn't approve of having his own Creole echo back at him. It certainly made conversation much easier. So, where did she go? Flight deck 404. I nearly didn't find it, Lewis sniggered. We got real lucky there. These things only log the deck plating power draw about every half hour, but the last log was on that deck, and... Flight log and itinerary for a light bulk transport headed for the Arrow system. Departure time 5 minutes after that deck plate log. The Arrow system? Vedrick had woken from his nearly 3-day-long sleep cycle and was fizzing with energy. Or at least, as much so as an alien the size of a big rig cab could fizz. He couldn't fit into the flight deck itself, but was filling most of the corridor behind it, peering in eagerly. They were still figuring out what his colours meant in the absence of translator implants, but the medley swelling all over him almost certainly denoted fascination and awe. Curiouser and curiouser, Kirk mused. The 3 human men glanced at one another before Lewis said what they were thinking. So, care to tell the ignorant monkey dudes what's special about the Arrow system? He prompted. It's the home of the Arrow, the oldest remaining civilization, Kirk said. Nearly 200,000 Terran years old. So, younger than the Igraeans and Hunters then? Amir said. I'm quite sure I said civilization, Kirk replied, a touch frostily. They're in late decline nowadays, and will most likely be extinct within a few decades. Why? Lewis asked. What happened? Kirk and Vendrick exchanged a glance. We don't know, Vendrick admitted. Species die eventually. They stop building, they stop expanding or trading. Eventually they stop reproducing and just die out. Nobody knows why. Isn't that kind of a huge problem? Lewis said. I mean, shit, every species does this? Why isn't everyone looking for a cure? This was met with a mutual equivalent of unknowing shrugs to the 2 aliens, who then shared another glance. Maybe we should look into that, Kirk admitted. It does seem strange. Now that you mention it, yes it does, Vendrick agreed. Anyway, the Omu-Aru are one such species in the last years of their existence. So, who goes to their home system? Amir asked. Psychologists, counselors, suicide hotline workers? Scavengers. Picking over the artifacts, hard work and advanced technology of the most ancient civilization in the galaxy. Exactly the sort of work where a human's brawn would come in useful, actually. Zane nodded. Well, let's get after her then, he said. Peace, Amir said. Degauzing is going to take another 3 hours. Zane paused. I'll go pick a bed then, he said, not bothering to say any more as he stalked out. Amir watched him go. Something seem off about him to you? He asked Lewis. Dude, we ship with a white zebra giraffe dude with 4 arms named after a Star Trek character, a 2-ton Mr. Snugglepuggers who glows in the dark, and 2 of the most sexually frustrated badasses in human history, Lewis said. What does off even mean on this ship? Seriously though. Lewis glanced back down the corridor, past Vendrick. Yeah, something's off about that guy. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 2nd day, AV. HMS Caledonia. Orbiting planet Gorai, Gauian space. Regari. That's... McDaniel wiped her eye. Damn it. I'm sorry. Regari ducked his head. Please, don't be. Thank you for caring so much. McDaniel nodded, taking a sip of her coffee to recover her composure. She was too professional to speak poorly of the Dominion, whilst in her official capacity as an officer of the Royal Navy, but the story of how they had apathetically kicked that poor confused slave from pillar to post, rather than putting her on a shuttle straight back to Gao, had frankly disgusted her. How could anybody have that kind of a lack of compassion? She realised that Regari had meant 2 things by thanking her for caring. Officer Regari, do you know how many of our people are scattered all over the known galaxy? I don't, he conceded. Not many, I assume. We've managed to contact, recover, and bring home a few dozen, and there are about 3 times as many that we know for certain are dead. There still leaves more than 10,000 unaccounted for, taken over the last 40 or 50 years. His ears pricked up and forward. That many? I suppose as Deathworlders we were particularly fascinating, but it's a big galaxy out there. How many stations are there, of all kinds? I don't know exactly. Millions? Ships? FTL-capable ones of all sizes. Billions, easily. And sapient beings in the trillions. And that's just in and around Dominion space, which takes up, what, a third of the galactic habitable ring? The whole galaxy officially, but yes, in practical terms, about a third. McDaniel nodded. We have an expression, a needle in a haystack. I'm familiar with it. It's an understatement. Then you see my point. We only have a tiny number of ships, and you're asking us to look for one specific needle out of the thousands of needles scattered across an entire continent's worth of haystacks. Yes. You must appreciate that that's not exactly feasible. I admire Miss Cheng a lot from your description of her, but I can't treat her as being any more worthwhile than any of the other abductees. Regari nodded his head, crestfallen. I suspected you would say that, he said, but Aimer insisted that I had to at least ask. From the way you described her, I'm surprised she's not here in person. She would be, but she... Our cub was born a few days ago. The timing was just wrong, so she asked me to come. Shouldn't you be there with her? I mean, your child... It doesn't work like that for us, Regari said. We don't do it the way you do. I'm happy. I know the little one will grow up and be an excellent Gowian, just like her mother. That's where my involvement ends. That sounded cold and tragic to McDaniel, but she held her peace. Refraining from commenting on alien cultural differences was one of the basic rules of diplomacy. Well, I'm sorry that I can't offer more than what we're already doing, she said. I understand, Regari assured her. Knowing the scale of the problem doesn't help, exactly. Zhu is important to me, and the Mother Supreme has taken a personal interest in her as well, but I understand. Perspective's a bitch, isn't it? Regari wrinkled his nose as he interpreted the painfully literal translation of that statement. Then he gave one of those Gowian nods. It is, he agreed, and stood. Thank you, Lieutenant. No, thank you for helping us. If nothing else, the Chang family can be told, and now that we know she's likely to be in disguise and what that disguise looks like, it might just help the search. I hope so, Regari agreed, keeping his private doubts private. Please, don't let me use up any more of your time. You have a ship to run. He stuck out a paw, keeping the wince off his face as McDaniel shook it a little too hard. She opened the hatch for him. The 2 Marines waiting outside snapped to attention. Bon voyage, officer, she said. I hope we'll have some good news for you. Gentlemen, please escort our guest back to his ship. Aye aye. This way, sir. Date point. 4th year. 9th month. 1st week. 2nd day. AV. Scotch Creek. Extraterrestrial Research Facility. British Columbia. Canada. Earth. Brigadier General Martin Tremblay. You're sure about this? It's a hostile galaxy for a man on his own. Browning my pants, but... yeah, I'm sure. And we need people who are willing to do this, right? Yeah, well... watch yourself out there. Our very first scout ship went missing on his first mission. The governess? Yeah, I know. I've made a few changes to the design. I'm amazed that Zurbook accepted the commission considering everything that's happened to them. Helps that they don't think it's for a human. The cockpit's designed for a Gowian. I figure I can put a different chair in when it reaches Simbrine. Yes. How is it, reaching Simbrine? Autopilot. Right. Duh. They shook hands. It didn't seem personal enough until Kevin shrugged and turned the handshake into a hug. Gonna miss you, man. Martin Tremblay laughed a little and broke the hug. Same. The place won't be the same without your coffee and pancakes. Just don't let Maurice change the name. You've got it. Goodbye, Kevin. Thank you for everything. Take care of yourself. The jump array's chamber had been reconfigured with a force field array that allowed the volume to be jumped to be swept clear of air by a force field bubble, saving huge amounts of time and energy by eliminating the costly process of keeping the payload suspended in a stasis field while the air was pumped out. There was just a general swish as the black block of the stasis field appeared, a thump of displaced air as a few square centimeters of clearance was created, and then an implosion as that air was allowed to rush back into the newly vacant space. Martin allowed himself just a moment's peace, but no more than that. There was still a research facility to run. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 1st week, 2nd day, AV. Starship Sanctuary, Deep Space. Julian Essa City. Okay, your turn. Huh? What's your favourite movie? It's, go on. Frozen. Please tell you like to sing along with Let It Go. I used to sing it on Nightmare. Andersson looked up at him in mild disbelief, then smiled delighted at the way his face was turning red. It kept my spirits up, he explained. She smiled, and snuggled her head into his shoulder. Oh yeah, this is going to work.